yeah.
Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction film, Total Recall. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The story is set in a future world where Earth is destroyed by chemical warfare. While the few remaining habitable lands are found only in two territories, the United Federation of Britain and the colony in Australia. The two places located far away from each other, that the factory workers living in the colony can quickly commute to the UFB each day via the fall, a gravity elevator through the Earth's core. Douglas, a colony citizen, is recently haunted by a strange nightmare, in which he plays as a secret agent with the mission to save a girl, and struggles desperately for life. But it always ends up with his being caught by the UFB robot cop. As always, Douglas gets freaked out and awakened by the nightmare in someday morning, only to find that his wife Laura begins to console him, trying to lead him out of the nightmare patiently. As they're about to turn the nightmare into a morning hormone let-go game, the game ends fast however, due to Laura's annoying phone call, which tells her a terrorist attack happened to a train in UFB. As Laura is a medical technician for emergency, she has to rush to the trouble spot immediately. While Douglas turns on the TV and gets to know this is the fourth terror attack happened in the UFB territory and made by the colony rebels. What's more, a former UFB agent who's believed having betrayed the UFB and turned to work for the colony rebels, however, is targeted as the major suspect and wanted by police for its responsibility. This news recalls Douglas of his strange nightmare, where he was also a secret agent fighting against the UFB. But in reality, he is just an ordinary factory worker who, like many others, lives in the colony and takes the fall each day to work for the factory in UFB. The fall costs him only 10 more minutes to reach his destination. In the factory, Douglas is assigned to assemble the robot cops. He's overwhelmed by the repetitive and intensive job for a long time and hopes to experience virtually a different lifestyle that can be literally achieved nowadays through a modern technology called the artificial memory, developed by the Recall company. However, knowing that such an artificial memory technology has caused brain damage to some people, his friend Robbie warns him of the potential dangers. While the newbie who receives Douglas' help on his first day work, however, strongly recommend Douglas to take the artificial memory at the Recall company, and tells Douglas that he has actually gone there for 3 times. And it's totally a wonderful experience for him. Sick of the repetitive and boring labor work, Douglas decides to take a try at least one time. Days later, he visits the Recall company, where the manager tells him that the memory he chooses for implant can't conflict with his current own memory, which would otherwise cause some irreversible damages to his brain. In the following procedure, the manager offers him several types of memories for his choice. Believing he just want to experience the exciting and adventure kind of life, Douglas chooses a secret agent. Knowing exactly what Douglas desires, the manager suggests he take the memory of a double agent. Moments later, with the company's logo stamped on his arm, Douglas is ready for the upcoming memory implant. But right after the brain is connected, some unknown technical issue happens, which to everyone's shock, shows the memory conflicting between his own and the virtual one, revealing that Douglas is actually an agent himself. The brain scanning further shows that there are some memory missing in his brain. Confused and alerted by the risks, the staff rush to pull the plug out of the connector. While the UFB agents, however, break in out of a sudden. They open fire at people randomly, and kill all the staff inside in seconds. Douglas, thanks to his instinct skills however, takes cover from the heavy gunfire, and manages to clear all of the agents later. Still in a great panic, Douglas rushes home, and meets Laura, who's just learned from the news of the gunfire her husband gets involved. To Douglas' shock this time, Laura doesn't console him as usual, but tries to seize him and suffocate him to death. It's revealed that Laura is indeed a UFB agent. Fortunately, after a fierce battle, Douglas manages to free himself from his bloody wife and run for his life out of the apartment. While in his escape, Douglas receives a message from a mysterious guy who tells that Douglas was a UFB agent before, but later betrayed the UFB and joined the colony rebels. the guy then urges Douglas to remove all of the trackers in his body and instructs him to go to a local bank for a safe, which hides the secrets of his identity. Following the man's instructions, Douglas then removes the communicator from his palm and gets the safe successfully at the bank, where he only finds a recording message, which tells him, however, not to trust even his current memory. Douglas plans to revisit the UFB to find out his real identity, but he has to figure out a way to get through the checkpoint first. With a camouflage helmet on his head though, he's soon spotted out at the checkpoint. Before any security guard follows up, he rushes out and runs onto a street, where he's picked up by a girl, Anna, seemingly the one who always shows up in his nightmare. The robot cops chase behind tightly, but right before they are close enough to catch them, Douglas turns off the anti-gravity engine, causing the car to fall towards the ground suddenly before turning on again. As a result, they get rid of the robocops following behind. Anna, however, passes out due to its strong counterforce. Douglas then carries Anna to his home, where from a holographic message, he gets to know his name is actually Carl, the best agent ever, serving for the UFB. He happened to know the evil plan of the UFB commander, who due to the land shortage in UFB, contemplates purging the whole colony with robot cops, attempting to claim lands from the colony. While Douglas is key to stop the commander's evil plan, for he's implanted into his memory a destruction code that can shut down all the RoboCop's operations. While still confused and doubtful about the message, Douglas learns more from Anna, who regains her consciousness, and proves to him that the commander indeed set up the terrorist attacks as a proper cause for them to invade the colony. To make Douglas believe, Anna then shows Douglas a remaining bullet injury scar on their palms, which was caused by the gunshot during their past runaway. The bullet scar recalls Douglas of some matched details in his nightmare. As a result, he turns to trust Anna and decides to help the rebels. But right when they are about to leave the apartment, the robot cops have taken control of the whole building. Still at a loss to the raid, Douglas gets frightened to see his factory friend Robbie, who shows up as an agent and tells him that he's still confined in his dream. He is then demanded to kill Anna, believing that would release himself from virtuality to the reality. Right at that moment, however, Douglas sees his wife Laura is also waiting there anxiously. He gets confused more by the situation and can't decide which one to trust this time. During the chaos, however, as he turns to Anna and catches sight of the running tears in her eyes, he shoots Robbie to death immediately. Laura then removes her disguise and leads the cops to break inside. Eventually, Douglas and Anna manage to escape from the heavy gunfire. Moments later, Anna takes Douglas to a polluted city, which is actually used for the rebel base. The rebel leader works hard to hack into his memory and tries to extract the destruction code to shut down all the RoboCops, but finds nothing inside though. While at the same time, however, detecting the rebels' hacking of Douglas' memory, the UFB has located the rebel base. They break through the defense and kill the rebel leader. Right then, the UFB commander reveals to Douglas the truth, that all of this is actually set up by Douglas himself, who under the mission, wiped off all of his memory at the beginning, to attain the trust from the rebels. His original memory was saved, and planned for recall only after the mission is completed someday. Despite being told like that, Douglas feels unwilling to believe this version of the truth, and refuses to recall his so-called memory. The UFB take Anna. Thereafter, the UFB begin their invasion of the colony. They send swarms of RoboCops into the fall, and instruct them to hunt even the innocent people living on the colony. Douglas later manages to free himself, and sneaks into the fall, where he sets up the bomb. He then heads for Anna, and finally saves her out, who still choose to believe Douglas. After that, Douglas confronts the UFB commander. They have a fierce fight before Douglas finally terminates him. With the help of Anna, they both escape out right before the bomb explodes, causing the fall to collapse down and burying most of the robot cops. After regaining his consciousness from the massive blasts, Douglas finds Anna sits beside and touches his face. He takes a glimpse of Anna's hand, only to find no bullet scar there. He's frightened to realize that the girl is actually Laura, who removes her disguise and begins to attack Douglas out of a sudden. Douglas struggles hard to defend himself, but manages to kill Laura finally. At the end of the story, Douglas walks out of the medical lab and finds the real Anna. He checks his hand and finds no Recall Company logo there anymore, which is, however, projected on a tall building in the far distance. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Bye.